Good evening. It's 6 o'clock in the Common Council Chambers, City of Marshfield, Wisconsin, Tuesday, September 9th at 6 o'clock. Call to order, roll call. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, identify possible conflicts of interest. Seeing none, going on to item D, public comment period, correspondence. At this time, I will recognize persons in attendance wishing to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. Comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes, and persons are asked to be respectful when addressing the council. No action will be taken regarding items not on the agenda. However, the council will take comments from the public under advisement. Please note that council members will not respond to your comments or questions. First up, Dan Mauer. And Dan, there's a little button down by the microphone, down on the podium that you can push to put it on down there, the little button. Jody will help you.
Jody's gonna help.
Watch the handcuffs, Jody.
Oh, all right.
Perfect.
My name's Dan Mauer, 410 Meadow Lane, Marshfield. I've lived here for 76 years. Basically, I've learned to fly at the airport. When I was 15 years old, I started sweeping floors and cleaning airplanes and gassing airplanes. I got all my ratings here through Roy Schwery. I worked for Roy flying the commuter for 10 years. Then I went on to the major airlines and I ended up retiring on a 757. During that time, I stayed living in Marshfield the entire time. During that time, the last 25 years, I've been on the airport committee. So there's nothing that's going on down here that I haven't seen before. There's always been a case where, okay, we can't fund the airport. I haven't had to come down here for 10 years, but here I am again, and I hate it. The number one thing is, they always bring up user fees. When I own an airplane, Sanford Health owns an airplane, Rail Transport owns an airplane, half the steel companies in this town own an airplane. They're your major employers. And you want to take more money from them? Give me a break. 95% of all monies used at the airport for major projects comes from the Aviation Trust Fund. The Aviation Trust Fund is monies determined and gotten not from the taxpayers, but from the users. When I was flying a 757 burning 1,000 gallons an hour, the federal government got tax from Northwest Airlines, paid a chunk of money for every gallon we used. When Rail Transport, Sanford Health, Custom Fab goes for an airplane ride, calling their welders, different places. Today was really cool at the airport. Just before I came down here, I saw Sanford Health load 10 people. It said Marshfield Clinics, Sanford Health. Those are your major employers. So don't come across, what does it do for the individual taxpayer? Those people are employing those taxpayers. Let me put it this way. $5,000 gets you $95,000. $50,000 gets you $500,000. That's the way it works. We've been busting our butt at the airport the last 4 years to put this together. We've been down at the state. We've been down at working with the feds, trying to put this together. And if you're not going to listen to the people on the committees, why do we have them? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next, Jeff Geyer.
Good evening, Jeff Geyer from the airport. I just wanted to
What is your address, Jeff?
Oh, my home address is W3827 US Highway 10, but of course the airport is 400 West 29th Street. And my wife calls that my second home because I'm there so much. I just wanted to talk a little bit quickly on what we've done to lead up to where we are now with the runway reconstruction and extension. This has been well over a 20-year project that we've been working on. And part of the reason we do this is there's a saying in aviation, a mile of road will take you a mile of highway will take you anywhere. So we're trying to, we know eventually we're going to have to grow. So when the Central Wisconsin or Central Avenue project happened, one of the things that came to us was we have some place that we need to put fill. Do you guys have any place to put it? At the airport, there's a 30-foot difference from one end of the runway to the other. And then on the south end, it would drop off either further. So we got loads of fill from Central Avenue that we worked with the state on. We worked with Bureau of Aeronautics, DNR. At the time, we had a program manager from the state that would physically come out and walk the airport. And he walked this and he said, you know, you guys just saved yourself over $700,000 by getting all this fill in. And that was really no expense to us other than it was an expense for the project to bring it out to the airport, but it was a short distance and that saved everybody some money there. The Highway 10 relocation project, that was another thing that we worked with the highway department on and DNR because we knew the project was going to possibly move County BB. And we worked with the highway DOT on that because that would help us immensely with more property on the south end. So then we worked with Bureau of Aeronautics saying, hey, we've got this highway relocation, county road relocation. There's some chance to buy up some property for future expansion here. So Bureau got on it and we purchased additional property right away. For the last 4 years, we've been working on the master plan. And we were just fortunate enough that things clicked into place that we came in and said, hey, we've got this aircraft here now on the airfield. The minimum runway they need is 5,500. Otherwise, we'd be in the same boat we've always been in. We don't have enough justification otherwise. Now we finally do. Because we couldn't track those planes that would go somewhere else because they couldn't come into Marshfield. But now they can if we get the 5,500 feet. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jack Beslick.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jack Beslick. I live at 709 West Blodgett here in Marshfield with my beautiful, supportive wife and 2 rambunctious children who are not here, thankfully, or this would be a very loud council meeting. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Weinbrenner redevelopment project. I understand that there may be a little bit of turbulence and some disagreements around the current state of the project. And I felt like now would be a good time for me to reintroduce myself and really propose an alternative option to the project. I'll very briefly give you the who, what, where, when, and why. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Jack. I've been in Marshfield for about the last decade. I'm a young investor and a business developer and founder. I'm energetic and I'm here to stay. I work in the community at Treeweiler Construction. I'm a certified project manager from North Central Technical College. And I have experience, although not the traditional experience in project redevelopments. I do have project management and leadership experience across several different industries, including DOT road construction, manufacturing and EHS, health and safety, software and game development, as well as real estate, managing a small real estate portfolio here in Marshfield. I think above all else, I'm supported by a really dedicated team of local professionals and investors, as well as some crucial advisors that would really push this project forward. I understand that I'm very young and I may lack that traditional skill set that you're looking for. However, I really do feel and believe that it is about the team that you put around you and their experiences and skills that can really build the project forward. So although there hasn't been any guaranteed lock-ins or agreements, prior to the closing of the RFQ recently, I've been in some consistent communication with local businesses, business professionals, and advisors that I think could build a very competent team to take over the Weinbrenner redevelopment plan and project. Some of those consist of construction and engineering firms such as Mark Zettler, who's a part of the historic redevelopment and building engineering program through Mark Zettler Design Firm. And he's out of La Crosse. I understand that he's also a Marshfield previous resident. He grew up here. As well as not a full commitment, but just some early conversations with Bozen and Crystal Bowman at Bozen Construction, as well as some other leadership members, as we kind of fleshed out the early parts of project proposal. Ron and Bill over at Forward, they were integral in helping us prepare a financial stack for the project and kind of how we may finance this project, and some other additional advisors and mentors that I think complement our team very well. Some of those being Jill and Jeremy Iwanski. They own 90 plus rental units across Marshfield. They understand how to manage large facilities and would offer up some of their time and knowledge to me in managing larger infrastructure. They also are partial owners of Treeweather Construction. You may know Marcia. She's offered her time for grant writing and some entrepreneurial advisements, as well as John Beslick, who spent 15 plus years in trades work and HVAC, advising large infrastructure in buildings and quotations that we may receive. And of course, last but not least, an advisor I have in Brian Ottman, who is also partial owner of Treeweather and owns multiple rental units in Marshfield, all of which I think could compose a fantastic team. So let me get into the meat and potatoes of our proposal for what that Weinbrenner building can be. Really, I see the building advancing and developing in 4 primary ways, all of which I think are well aligned with Marshfield's economic development plan, specifically in housing and bringing businesses into the downtown. The first being industrial modern living. I think this could add an interesting living flair to downtown Marshfield, introducing 48 living units to the building in the 3-story section on the east side. Those would be tall ceilings, open living spaces, really inviting, with potential for furnished short-term units. Above all of that, I would like to see lifestyle and dining and other businesses come into the property, including possibly a rooftop patio and other businesses.
Jack, I apologize, but your 5 minutes are up. But thank you very much. Yes, Rebecca?
I'd like to ask for a little bit of leniency on the time here.
Other council members? Because this is your choice, not mine. Okay, Jack, go ahead. We'll give you another 3 minutes. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely.
Continuing on, I would like to see other businesses enter the space and really flesh out the multi-use concept that we envision for the property. Things like lively restaurant and a lounge, a bar, and potentially rooftop patio seating that kind of overlooks the ball diamonds. Office spaces, creative spaces, and potentially a coffee shop built right into the more business-centric side of the property on the west side, and some smaller shops and retail spaces. Adding to the all-inclusiveness of the property and the multi-use build, I would like to see other amenities that people are really looking for in these multi-use living spaces and business places, including like a workout space and a weight room. Things like a hot tub and a sauna, as well as personal storage lockers, of course, high-speed internet in today's day and age, and on-site management provided by me if I were to move into the building and make sure that tenants and patrons are getting the best, highest quality of service. To put it simply, really, our plan is to use thoughtful design and community engagement and sustainable practices to make that the shining star project and really be a catalyst for the West 2nd Street redevelopment. We want to focus on historic preservation, aligning the halls with Marshfield history, potentially donated by businesses in the area, really solidifying the history of the building and making it a showcase for anybody walking through the property. And also, we would like to keep a lot of that industrial aesthetic within the design of the property, including brick walls, open floor joists, and the like. I understand that this is a very complex project. It will take multiple phases, as discussed with Mark Zettler, the potential engineer on the project. Of course, we passed phase 1 and phase 2, entering more so into phase 3, potentially at the end of this year and in the spring. Where I think this project proposal really stands out is the split between the residential and the commercial. Being split, they're not exclusively dependent on each other. So that would allow for each section, whichever done first, to really cash flow and get it upstanding and fruitful before toppling or essentially affecting the other. These residential construction phases and the commercial phase would potentially be broken out into other sub-phases if necessary. So that would add a little bit more detail to and complexity to the phases or the project phase and timeline. Addressing the housing and living situation in Marshfield. Really, this is the why and the how of the project. Now, this is all preliminary, of course, and things can change.
And I'm sorry, Jack, your next 3 minutes are up and I can't let you go any farther, but thank you very much. And if you would like to come back in 2 weeks and give more of your or hand out to the council, is that okay with that?
Yeah, I can certainly distribute any materials that you would like to provide me as I get it to the body.
And you're always available to contact me. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Mary Jo Wheeler.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Mary Jo Wheeler-Schuler, 10641 County Road H, Marshfield, Wisconsin. I was coming here tonight to talk about a car purchase, but since we don't have an economic development board, that looks like Council has turned into that. Jack, you did a great presentation. We'd have loved to have heard from you, right, Paul, at our EDB meetings. Then I bump into Dan Maurer and Jeff, and I realize this is about economic development for the city of Marshfield. Regardless of what political aisle we're on, we're here to make Marshfield better. Are you okay, Lois?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it struck, when I was looking through the packet, it struck me that we are going to be buying a vehicle from out of town, from Napleton Chevrolet, and they're in Illinois. And I just want to remind the city and the people on the council that you store your snow at Wheeler's free of charge every year. We actually never got a chance to bid that, which is a shame. All of us need to buy locally. Our milk at our school wasn't purchased at Nasonville up until last year from Nasonville. It was bought out of the area. What does Nasonville Dairy, Ken Heineman, and the Heineman family do for the community of Marshfield? What does V&H do? What does Wheeler's do? What did any local business in town do? The movie theater. Think about it. When your kids need a donation for $50 here, $20 there, do you call up the dealership in Illinois or do you call up the local dealerships? So I do understand Tim's situation, that there was an easy button in life, and sometimes life isn't easy. There's a system that he went on to bid the vehicle. And unfortunately, Napleton, Wheeler's wasn't on that system, which I am looking into. But however, we came in $300 less. And on your agenda tonight is whether you buy a vehicle at Napleton Chevrolet, and you're going to spend a lot more money storing your snow, trust me, this winter, than $300. but I just encourage everyone. The airport, sorry, Natasha, did you have a comment? Okay. So the airport, people don't look at it as economic development, but it is. All those people, we all want a restaurant here. We all want Marshfield to grow. Guess what? Those businesses that fly into our airport, they're willing to invest money if we welcome them with open arms. They have money. Yeah, we see them fly in and out with their planes and their jets. They have money. Why are we trying to stifle that? Why are we trying to make that 20% passed on to those people that use the airport? You have no idea the additional economic development and impact that it has to the city of Marshfield. Get your head out of the sand. Realize what your local businesses do to you here and how they contribute back with taxpayer dollars, or helping your kids for dance, football, donating to the fire department, donating to local police department. We're all here to help each other. Let's quit hitting each other in the head with paddles and start rowing in the same direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Seeing no other citizen comments, we'll go on to item E, approval of minutes, August 26, 2025. Motion by Alderman Fires, second by Alderman Dellis. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. Item F, staff updates.
Yes, I have one this evening. Actually, it's going to come from our IT director, Eng Ang. He's going to be talking about possible change in our domain name. Eng?
Yes. So the city has this current domain name of ci.marshfield.wi.us. And our intention is to change it to marshfieldwi.gov. And the reason is, the .gov is a domain that is managed by the CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and it is much more secure and trusted place for all the site visitors. If we were to make this change, there are two major things that get impacted. First off is the website address. So instead of going to ci.marshfield.wi.us, which is very lengthy to type, it will be marshfieldwi.gov in the future. However, when we make those changes, we intend to make it backward compatible, meaning that at least for a period of time, maybe a few years, we'll make it so that even the old address that you type, it will redirect you to the new address. And then the second impact will be the email address. So instead of whatever our first dot last name at ci.marshfield.wi.us, it will be first dot last name at marshfieldwi.gov. Again, our intention is to make the new and the old email address coexist if we are able to do it. Again, without actually doing the proof of concept configuration, we could not prove that for sure. But once we do, we get the okay to proceed, we'll figure that out. I just want you to be aware of that potential domain name change that I will be bringing forward to the staff leaders meeting that we will have tomorrow morning, and so on. So when we get enough support from the department division heads to move forward, we'll make that change. So, any questions?
I'll ask a question. Is there a fee
Okay.
to change? Is there a fee to change to the?
No. So the reason of the .gov is about, if I'm not mistaken, starting 2021, there was a new law or policy that the federal government dedicated CISA to support that .gov domain. On top of that, they used to charge like $500 to register for that thing, and they eliminated that fee. So there's no cost to be on that domain. Certainly, there may be consulting costs if we need help in how to reconfigure our setup to go that route. But in the long run, though, there's no yearly fee to go with that name. So,
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you for that report, Ing. We'll look forward to the next step.
thanks.
Next up, mayor's comments. The first will be reading a proclamation from the National Sea Tracks Think Train Week. City of Marshfield, Wisconsin proclamation. National Sea Tracks Think Train Week. Whoop, whoop. We have a couple of train enthusiasts in the crowd. Whereas Sea Tracks Think Train Week is to be held across the U.S. from September 15th through the 21st, 2025, and whereas 2,252 rail grade crossing collisions resulted in 749 personal injuries and were responsible for 268 fatalities in the United States during 2024. And whereas 1,465 pedestrian trespassing casualties have been occurring in the United States, resulting in 821 pedestrians being killed and other 644 injured while trespassing on railway property rights of way during 2024. And whereas educating and informing the public about rail safety, reminding the public that railway right-of-ways are private property, enhancing public awareness of the dangers associated with highway rail grade crossings, ensuring pedestrians and motorists are looking and listening while near railways and obeying established traffic laws, will reduce the number of avoidable fatalities and injuries caused by incidences involving trains and citizens. And whereas the International Association of Chief of Police's, National Operation of Safeguard Incorporated, United States Department of Transportation, and all local, state, county, and railway law enforcement officers, first responders, and railway corporations commit to partnering together in an effort to educate at a national level all aspects of railway safety, to enforce applicable laws in support of National Sea Tracks Think Train Week. Now therefore be it resolved, I, Lois T. Strake, Mayor of the City of Marshfield, do hereby attest my full support proclaiming September 15th through the 21st, 2025 National Sea Tracks Think Train Week, and I encourage all citizens to recognize the importance of rail safety education, in witness of which I have set my hand and seal on this Tuesday, September 9th, 2025, Lois T. Strake, Mayor. And I have a couple other updates also. I attended the Marshfield Utilities meeting yesterday, and one exciting thing that I know has happened this summer, they have a summer apprentice program, which if you go on their website now after the meeting, you can see what they've done and how impressive that is. 3 young people actually got to do things with utilities this summer, and who knows, maybe they'll be the next utilities person. Number 2, the school system funding the second liaison officer for schools. This is fantastic. We've been wanting this for the longest time, but of course, with our budget, we couldn't handle that, but they stepped up and gave us a second liaison officer. So this is great for all of our schools. Mackie also gave me a few updates. Tomorrow, Leadership Marshfield starts, and we have 3 city employees taking part: Alexis Sonneman, Ashley Drager, and Cindy Gates. Also, our chamber champions honoring Small Business of the Year, Next Home, Hub City, and Firm of the Year, Mid-State Technical College, is September 25th, and our legislative breakfast is September 26th. You can find all this information on the Mackey website. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And again, I ask you to go out and look at different websites and see what's happening. There's a lot going on in Marshfield, a lot of good stuff happening, and we're excited to see all of the good things that our people can bring to Marshfield to make it even better. And number H, council comments. Alderman Tompkins.
Just a reminder that Maple Fall Fest is this weekend.
Any other comments from the council? Item I, City Administrator's update.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 things tonight. Well, as you know, we were intending initially to have a strategic planning session this past Saturday with a second session on September 20th. We did not have a confirmed quorum for the 6th, as it turned out, of people who could be in person. I think I mentioned to some of you that the facilitator would like to have the people there in person because he's hoping to do some breakout sessions, a roundtable, talking about some of the goals and opportunities. And so that ruled out, in his mind, remote participation. So talked about this a little bit. I think I've floated emails to the council. We could try and look at coming up into late September and October, but talking to the facilitator, I think we feel that maybe waiting until January makes more sense. I know we've gone a long time without the strategic plan and we all want to get to it. But if you look at the budget season running from October into maybe mid-November and then followed up by Thanksgiving and Christmas, I have a hard time figuring that we're going to want to have extra meetings. And I will say that one of the struggles we had is really nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, during the spring and summer when we tried to set this up, people have vacations, they have family reunions, they have weddings, other things. So it was just hard to get enough people together. Hopefully, the dead of winter will be better. So I'll be floating some January dates out to you. The facilitator has told me that he's available all Saturdays in the month of January. So look for a note for me to be coming to you soon. The other thing is we had an issue come up, some conversation about what happens when we have a cancellation of a meeting on Tuesday night. You know, we now have JL meetings followed by Finance, Budget, and Personnel, followed by Board of Public Works. But what happens if the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting is canceled? At staff level, we thought the best thing is to move that up, the Board of Public Works meeting up, rather than make them wait deeper into the dinner hour in the evening. But that can cause some confusion. So I guess I'm looking for any feedback in terms of what you'd like to do. Would you like to keep in those circumstances, keep the Board of Public Works meeting at 6:15 as scheduled? Or, I mean, is there interest in moving it up to fill the vacant seat, the vacant time slot, I should say, earlier in the evening, maybe say 5:15, or even if there's no JL meeting, could even be slightly earlier. So I take any comments on that now or later as we look at that issue. I can float out an email to people and look for your response if that's appropriate. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. And I have nothing else for city administrator's update.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Again, if you want to reach out to Steve with any comments, that would be great. Item J, reports from commissions, boards, and committees.
Good evening. My name is Evan Dayton. I am the chairman of the Communications Committee. I have with me Cole and Pete, and they're going to be handing out some paperwork here. We're running into some funding challenges with the Communications Department. As a lot of people probably don't know, franchise fees are the primary source of revenue for the Communications Department and are rapidly declining as residents move away from cable TV. Franchise fees are only provided from Spectrum or TDS within the city to fund the department. Given that most people are changing to streaming services, they do not provide franchise fees. And under current state law, we cannot collect any revenue from those streaming services. Given this outdated funding model, it's no longer sustaining the Communications Department. As of 2025, just a budget snapshot starting as of this month, projected revenue for this year was $206,000 in franchise fees, $49,500 in state aid. The actual revenues that we have seen in the first 3 quarters is $133,000, which estimates at about $25,000 to $30,000 shortfall for the Communications Department. As of right now, there's a savings fund balance, only $40,000 projected by the end of 2025 if we cover the gap in savings for this year. Cuts as of the beginning of this month, we have shifted school board coverage to existing staff workloads, reduced program production time with professional fees, also eliminated travel reimbursement, van mileage, director's cell phone, office and operating supplies, maintenance, repairs, online sharing networks, as MediaFire, and Constant Contact, which is a city newsletter that goes out. The radio low power FM project is no longer going to happen. And as for the 2026 outlook, after wages and benefits for 2 staff members in the Communications Department, there will be just about $5,000 remaining for operations. Not enough to function if the city continues to use only cable franchise fees and state aid as a revenue source. Using reserves to balance the 2026 budget would deplete the fund balance by 2027. As of this year, extra production work has been done for 2025 to increase some of the income the department has, but has not offset the losses from the franchise fees. Producing extra work for the city's economic development marketing efforts, such as the certified site with Mackey, was also done this year to gain extra funds. Communications staff is also in the process of seeking $5,000 sponsorships for 2026 to support studio programs and staff-produced content. Going forward, additional funding sources are going to need to be used to help support and balance out the communications department's budget. We're going to continue to seek support from not only the city administrator of this common council, as well as staff and the community to help support this department to find a more sustainable plan going forward to finance this department in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Coleman sauce.
That's for communication committee.
Thank you, gentlemen. Actually, tell Jen that's a new one. That's a new one, Jen. A different one. Yep. Nope, that's okay. Thank you, Cole. Yep. Any other reports from commissions, boards, and committees? Seeing none, moving on the consent agenda. We have a motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Fire. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Reigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. Nothing on action item L will be skipped over. Item N, presentation of candidates for election to a 7-year term on Marshfield Utilities Commission, presented by myself, Lois T. Drake, Mayor. We have one candidate this evening who, if you'd like to come forward, Paul Capua.
Good evening. I'm Paul Capla, live at 1012 Laird Street here in Marshfield. Been a resident of the city for about 35 years and have been on the Utilities Commission for the past roughly 7. I'm interested in re-upping and being reelected to another 7, this would be my first 7-year term, but to a 7-year term as it now stands. I hope you all had a chance to read the letter that's in the packet that was sent out. So I don't want to reread it, but if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Seeing none, we will elect in 2 weeks unless you would like to suspend the rules.
We didn't put it though.
Pardon me?
We didn't.
Okay, okay. Just figuring there was no one else. Okay, all right, then we will see you in 2 weeks. You don't have to come back again, Paul, but we will vote on that in 2 weeks. But there will be nobody else that can come forward because the deadline was last Friday. Okay. Item N, request to approve budget resolution number 18-2025 Adler Road Trail project, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
Good evening. This item was first presented to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee back on August 12th of 2025. Just for a little context for the project, back in 2020, the city was awarded a Transportation Alternatives Program grant, which is an 80-20 split, 80% to be paid by the federal Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and then the remaining 20% by the city to construct a pedestrian bike trail along the south side of Adler Road Trail. This project completed a link in the city's trail system, and the design phase was managed by the DOT, and the construction phase was managed by the city. Throughout the years, the funding for the project fell short. This is due partly because of an overage in the design cost. Anything over what the 80-20 split in the application stated would become the responsibility of the city. And additionally, land acquisition costs were not included in as a participating cost in the grant itself, and were to be covered 100% by the city, which was throughout the project's progression was not included in any budget. How an 80-20 grant works is we submit a project budget to the granting agency, and it can include all project costs, whether the grant itself will pay for them or not. Some costs that can't be or won't be paid by a grant are the city's own staff time and resources, things like land acquisition, and then minor incidental expenditures. Throughout the last 5 years of this project, this one got away from us, but we have since implemented project accounting to clearly allocate funding and expenditures to each project. We've created better budget projections through collaboration with the finance department and the engineering department, and we do have ongoing communication as a project progresses through its different phases. With that, we would need to fund this project up to $85,500. This includes costs that were non-participating, and then there's a $5,000 contingency for any wrap-up items that the DOT may still have in its pipeline. The funding source that I'm proposing for this shortfall would be a contingency from the general funds fund balance. Now, this would be above and beyond what was approved in the city administrator's contingency account. This would be in addition to that. However, it is needed to fully fund the project and close it out so that the accounting records are correct moving forward. It should be noted that all of the bills have been paid. We aren't withholding any payments to either the DOT or any contractor that we have worked with. So with that, I would ask for approval of Budget Resolution 18-2025, which would fund the Adler Road Trail project using general fund contingency dollars.
We have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Fire. Any questions, comments for Jennifer? Alderman Spiros?
Jennifer, can you refresh my memory? What was the projected 20% at the beginning of the project, and what is the total amount that we're now paying?
So at the beginning of the grant project back in 2020, we had estimated project costs of $76,516 for design and $379,255 for construction. And then in 2024, as we moved through the process, we had seen increases in construction costs significantly, 15 to 20% towards the end of COVID in 2022, 2023. And those costs were revised at that time to $478,903 for construction. And the city's anticipated share at that time would be about $135,000, and we had budgeted funding of $35,000 for room tax and $100,000 in long-term debt. By now, in 2025, we are expecting the cost will not exceed $769,000 based on what's left to be billed on contracts, and then a small amount for contingency. It should also be noted that we did receive $69,000 in donations to help offset some of that expenditure overage, but it is still short by roughly $85,000.
$5,000?
$85,000.
$85,000.
Right.
Okay. So it went from $379 to $769. Right. Was the council apprised of this any time throughout the project?
I think just as contracts would be approved for the various different vendors, I think the design was managed by the city. So those contracts would have been gone through approval through the Board of Public Works, I believe, and then through Common Council. And then the DOT project you would have approved both the original grant and then the revised a grant agreement that was made in 2024.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about you have now a new project accounting system in place. And then you talked about communication. Does either of those things that you've put in place have any steps that would keep council apprised of increasing cost as they come, so that we then have a choice whether to continue the project, which we don't have now because you've already paid the bills. We just have to say yes. So this is really just, function, whatever you want to call it. We're just here to say yes, but we don't really have a choice. Is that going to change with these new systems in place?
Sure. You have probably, I think I may have come before you with some budget resolutions either last year or this year for unanticipated costs. So that would be the process that you would become aware of any overages in a project. We're also in the process of implementing a procurement procedure that would also kind of have more guidelines and monitoring. What's to come is probably a purchase module within our software system so that we don't have to do all this work by hand. So more to come. We're not done making improvements, but through all of these things that we've been working on for the past year or so, you will become more aware of things as they're happening.
Yeah, that would be good because I think that making this council advised of these changing cost or expenses of projects needs to happen before the money is spent.
Yes.
That way the council actually has a true say in representing the taxpayers on how the money gets spent, not just an automatic yes at a meeting like today.
Noted. Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins, then Alderman Werman.
Thank you. So the issue that is before us tonight is that we have an open account and we've already spent this money, but because some of it is repaying departments for the work that they did, I just want to know if we have external auditors come and look at our various accounts. If we have an open account like this that we haven't closed, does this red flag for them?
It could become a red flag if we don't fund this account because you would have an excess of expenditures in this particular project is being accounted for in our Parks and Rec Capital Improvement Fund. So now, if we don't have excess revenue from, ongoing projects sitting in there as of the end of the year, and we have perfectly matched our revenue and expenses on our current projects, this one would still show out there as a negative, which would be reported as such in our financial statements.
Alderman Werman.
Thank you. Kind of echoing a little bit of what Rebecca said, I understand we're in a position tonight where we kind of need to just move forward. I would like to request that we get an entire breakdown of this. I'm incredibly intrigued to see a $100,000 difference in cost. I don't know that I could say, COVID was definitely extended, but 2023 into 2024 doesn't strike me as end of COVID. That's still pretty high in labor. I would like to see the difference there, what that was. But in addition, I also would like to see our general budget for this. I want to know if we were including, I know it says we were not including it in the award letter, but I want to know if we were projecting part of our cost as the city expenses and things like that we were going to accrue as well. I want to know if we were planning for that from the beginning. I just would kind of like to see a full breakdown on this in the future, even if it's just something emailed out that we can all deep dive on our own. I want to do a little digging into this.
I will make that note.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Reigel?
Aye.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
Item O, request to authorize request for qualifications RFQ for redevelopment of the current Weinbrenner facility presented by Steve Bard, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't go through the whole history of how we got here, just a little bit high level. Back in October of 2024, we did meet with the CDA jointly in this room and approved a request for qualifications, an RFQ, if you will, to be sent out to interested parties for redeveloping the current Weinbrenner facility, which they will be vacating in early 2026. We did end up from that RFQ selecting companies to interview. Interviews were conducted. We ultimately chose to go with Jeffers from the Milwaukee area, kind of started that road with them in early 2025. And after some discussions, including several council discussions, open and closed, about the project, council on August 12th came out of closed session and voted not to pursue working with Jeffers anymore, but rather to do another RFP. And that's what it's referred to in the minutes as a request for proposals. I would suspect that the correct term that we wanted is request for qualifications. We talked about this with our consultant, Jackie Misch from Vanderwall, because at this point in the process, you're just simply not going to get full-blown proposals. That's a ton of work for companies to do when they really don't know if they even have a foot in the door with a community to work with, and you're not likely to see those. So we're looking for a company who has the wherewith and the understanding of our project to want to move forward and be our firm to work with to get this done. So anyway, moving forward, it was agreed and voted upon to do another, I'm going to call it RFQ because I think that's what the intent was. And what you have in the packet tonight is a new document to review. You're going to see it's fairly similar to the one we had back in October 2024 because a lot of the RFQ is history. It's data about the city, background information, and that transfers pretty readily from the first RFQ to the second one. But I'm going to hit the highlights of things that have changed. You're going to see clearly the themes that council wanted to address, things that troubled them from the previous discussions. Namely, first and foremost, the Jeffers proposal focused on either being entirely affordable housing or largely affordable housing with perhaps up to 20% market rate units. But like I said, basically an affordable housing project. Council's made it clear that they want to see market rate and above, and even they'd like to see mixed use components like light retail, commercial, those kind of things. So I'm going to walk through it. If you've got it in front of you, I'd like to flip through some of the pages that have changes. Starting with page 2 in the document in your packet. As you get down toward the bottom, there's 2 references in the 3rd paragraph to adding West 2nd Street redevelopment plan. One of the things council made it very clear, they want to see this tie to the West 2nd Street redevelopment plan in a meaningful way. In other words, it's the first piece of what we're hoping to accomplish going west of the intersection of Chestnut and 2nd, that area. So we want it to be a project that people feel good about as the kickoff. The bottom paragraph on page 2 also makes reference to that, but it also refers to, in the 2nd sentence or 3rd sentence, I should say, that after careful consideration, the city has determined that market rate housing is better aligned with their vision for the Weinbrenner building. Turn to page 3, the top 2/3 of that page is heavily changed from the original RFQ, and it reflects the council's vision on this. So the top paragraph talks about looking for a project that includes market rate or luxury residential units, a modest amount of commercial or non-residential space on the ground floor, on-site covered parking for some or all of the units, and amenities that will support the building's primary use. That theme carries down through the next paragraph and even farther down toward the reuse and non-residential uses is what the council is hoping to get from a creative mixed-use project that, as I said, is market rate or above for residential and has commercial type of uses in the program. Beginning with the bottom of page 3 of the proposed RFQ, it's largely, as I said, historical data that is very similar to the one we issued back in the late fall of 2024. There's a very bold statement at the top of page 4. The city is not interested in a LIHTC project. For those unfamiliar with the term, LIHTC is a low-income housing tax credit program, which was a foundational piece in the Jeffers proposal in terms of financing their proposed redevelopment. But the council has made it clear that they do not want to look at low-income project on this one. They want to look at market rate or above. After that, really truthfully, as you flip through the rest of the document, it is, again, almost entirely, if not entirely, the same as it was last year. I will draw your attention to page 10, and that is the timeline for the RFQ process. You'll see the dates have been left vacant. They have not been determined specifically as yet, but you get kind of a flavor as to what would happen. We would issue the RFQ yet this month, and then probably be reviewing the responses in November, making a determination of who we want to work with in December, probably the early part of December. And then you get into early 2026, it's the whole issue of reaching agreement on an exclusive right to negotiate, something very important to a developer, so they know that you're locked into working specifically with them. Then you get to development agreement and so forth. So the dates would be yet to be filled out, but that is the heart and soul of what the timeline would probably look like if we in fact went with the RFQ in front of you. So with that in mind, this document was prepared largely by Jackie Mish of Weinbrenner with assistance from our team that we have, which includes Jennifer, me, Josh Miller, and others. But our recommendation would be that you give your approval to this RFQ and authorize the city to move forward with soliciting proposals from qualified developers for this project.
I have a motion by Alderman Giles. Pardon me? Would you confirm what your motion is? Thank you.
It would be to approve the RFQ.
Second by Alderman Cran, and you agree? Alderman Dellis?
I was wondering if we could have another presentation from Jack to hear the rest of his idea before we go forward with the RFQ.
Okay, looking to get greater definition or clarification of what types of mixed use. I mean, I think she's kind of put out there an open field of possibilities, but what would be, I'm not against what you're saying, what would be your hope for her presentation?
To hear more about what Jack wants, or Jack is proposing versus sending this out right away.
Okay.
Yes. Jack.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about, oh, I apologize.
The gentleman that did the public.
I'm so sorry, Jen.
Sorry.
I thought you were talking about Jackie, our
No,
consultant.
sorry.
Oh, I totally understand that.
Okay.
Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you. There were just a few things that I don't know if this is the appropriate time just to say, could we make this a little less limiting for people? For instance, it says that we want to have mixed use, but what if there's a developer who says, I'm not going to make money on commercial on the first floor, but I think I can do it with all apartments. And if we only say that we want mixed use, feels like we're being constrictive. So I don't know, have you guys thought about, like, there's things like that where it says we want it to be open to the public. You know, a developer might say, well, actually, I want an apartment building that's not open to the public. We have in there that we want covered parking for some or all the units. I'd prefer to say one covered parking per unit or something. So I don't know when is the appropriate time to kind of do that, but I just feel like there's some things in there that might deter a developer.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, you definitely could, if you want to, relax the terminology a little bit and say preferred. That's what you see a lot of times in RFQs, such and such as preferred. In other words, you're looking for a mixed use component with commercial or whatever, but you're not going to rule out other submissions if that's what your intent is.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Alderman Varsho.
To Ms. Dellis's point there, when Mr. Beslick have to support, present his in this RFQ as well? He would have to answer this and put his.
Yeah, he would ultimately be submitting his credentials, his qualifications.
Credentials.
Yeah, I mean, I think the intent, what you're saying, is to hear some of his ideas, but at the end of the day, I mean, he'd still be expected, if he wants to be considered, to submit, as would other companies, a response to the RFQ.
I mean, I enjoyed his presentation, but letting him finish before we send this out is not really ideal. This is what the council asked for. They wanted to resend this out. We should send it out. Very good presentation. I'd like to see the rest of it, but not until after we send this out and he puts his name in that hat as well.
Is that fair enough? Okay. Yes, Steve.
Just to clarify, going back to Councilmember Tompkins' comment, is that, because I assume we're going to be voting soon, is that the body's intent to have language that would be more toward preferred rather than required in some of those portions, and what would that look like? Is there an agreement on up and down the line, or just certain parts of the stipulated things being relaxed to say preferred? What's your thought on that as a group here?
Okay, first Alderman Spiros.
Yeah, the first thing Natasha mentioned was changing the absolute language of it having to be a mixed use. I agree with that. I think, you know, we'd like to see it be a mixed use, but you do really limit it. If somebody comes in and makes the whole building full of fabulous apartments that are acceptable to us, and there is no cafe or whatever, you know, I'm probably going to be okay with that personally. I do think that the next point of it not being open to the public, I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand. I think we can assume if it's a strictly an apartment building that people aren't going to want that open to the public. I mean, that's just weird. And the covered parking, I'm not sold on. I mean, that would be, you know, a wish, but I wouldn't certainly say it has to be covered parking, because that, again, is restricting who could bid on it.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you, Mayor. I would try to encourage something, and we're giving them what we want, but I wouldn't restrict that they come in with an entirely different idea. Who knows what a developer is going to come up with and what they foresee with it. Maybe something, you know, alternate type are welcome, because I'm not even thinking of it right now, but there's probably a million uses out there that someone might say, well, we don't want to put housing in there. We'd love to do this. So maybe just a little blurb that would leave that door open for some creativity from that end. Just thought.
Alderman Weigel.
Thank you. Just to echo, like, well, not maybe echo, but a follow up on Mr. Riley's point. I think the original RFQ that went out was pretty open-ended. And if I recall correctly, all 5 or 6 proposals were identical with LIHTC on there. And I don't think that was to our appetite. So I think if anything, what we're going to want to do is, at the very minimum, put down preferred what we want on there. But, you know, to Mr. Riley's point, I think there needs to be some flexibility, but leaving it open-ended is going to get us the same exact thing we already got once before. So I don't think leaving it wide open is really going to do us much good, because we've already seen what the appetite for the developers is, and that's LIHTC.
I think, yeah, you know, I think given the significance of this document, since we're going through it the second time, you know, I don't want to delay this any more than we need to. We want to get this out there, but it may be worthwhile to make some changes to kind of address what I think you're saying about trying to relax a little bit, to give them some leeway, some flexibility in their response, and not feel like they have to do exactly what it says in a couple of these paragraphs. I'd like to get your permission to bring it back in 2 weeks, so that we, again, when we send this one out, we all feel good about it. Because I don't want to be sitting here in, you know, late November saying, oh my gosh, we didn't get the response that we hoped for. Maybe we deterred them from responding because it wasn't worded well. So, I mean, you could certainly, there's a motion on the floor right now, but I think one alternative might be to come back and make sure that the wording is exactly what you want before we send it out, so there's no misunderstandings regarding the responses we get.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Yeah, I would just remind, I would not suggest removing the no LIHTC. So that would eliminate that portion of it. I think it just opens possibilities that we potentially haven't thought of. So good idea.
Okay. Are people okay with the idea of leaving the very firm no LIHTC at this point? Because that was really the heart of what came out of these last few weeks of conversations. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? Please vote.
Can I do a point of order? We have a motion on the floor, but then we just had our city administrator tell us that the motion says we're going to send this out as it is. But then we just had our city administrator tell us that we're going to wait for 2 weeks. So we need to decide, are we taking this motion off the floor and waiting for 2 weeks, or are we voting for a motion and we're not doing any of these edits?
You have a motion on the floor. No one made any motion to amend or withdraw. So the motion stands unless that had happened. Right now, the motion is to approve moving forward with the RFQ as it was presented in the pack. Mr. Werman?
Are we voting? Because Andy has his hand up.
You are voting. You're in the middle of the vote.
Okay. No.
And Mr. Reigel?
Nay.
That motion does not pass. Actually, it fails. We will bring it back in 2 weeks with the recommendations. Item P, request by Councilmember.
Point of order, don't we need to vote on that?
No, because the motion did not
We don't need to
pass.
vote to send it back in 2 weeks. Right, the motion did not pass, but we don't need to make a motion to send it back to the city administrator.
Could do that, but it's not necessary.
We could, but it's not necessary, as Steve just mentioned.
Perfect.
Okay, then we can move on. Is that okay with everybody, or do we want to
I'll
just?
say, I think I've got what I need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion. Okay, thank you. I just don't want to get in trouble. Okay, request by Councilmember Curran to add project 415-3825 runway 16-34 extension and partial parallel taxiway back into staff's proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement plan CIP presented by Scott Curran, Councilmember District 5.
So a motion was made to remove that project from the CIP until more information could be provided. There is additional information and some additional context I'd like to make. The cost of the project is $117,000 split over next year and the following year. The original runway was built in 1991, providing 33 years of usage, meaning we probably got our money out of that runway a few times. The cost of the project based on that lifespan is less than $4,000 a year. And when this was taken out of the CIP, it was asked that we find new revenue sources. And as the airport committee, we did do that. We are going to find an increase of $5,000 a year in a land lease going forward. We are increasing the hangar rentals to the maximum allowable rate of 10%. Some additional context, the runway length is the shortest of our peers. Wisconsin Rapids has a 5,500-foot runway. Merrill has a longer runway. Stevens Point has a 6,000-foot runway. Wisconsin Rapids has Wausau has a 5,200 foot runway, which is landlocked and cannot be expanded, but they also have Central Wisconsin Airport in the vicinity. The airport, as was mentioned by several people, provides a tangible economic benefit to the city of Marshfield. I've lived by the airport for 19 years and never really understood the amount of traffic that comes in and out of that airport. We have multiple stainless steel companies that utilize the airport. And more importantly, it's not just them using the airport, it's their customers, which also fly in and visit a major door manufacturer and another major stainless steel company. Sanford Health and Rail use the airport extensively. But last month, we had 12 separate med flights using the airport, providing what I would only assume are life-saving measures to those involved. And this runway extension caters more than just to jet traffic. It provides safety measures for jets as well as turboprop planes. We had over 300 turbo and jet flights so far this year. We are above last year by about 10%. And possibly what happened at our last airport committee meeting was Carl Kemper, who's the project engineer for this expansion from Beaker Hoppy, said there is a legal requirement for us that mandates the extension of this runway because usage has changed. And what they are grant assurances, because anytime you take federal funds to pay for airport, infrastructure, snow equipment, anything like that, you are required to maintain this airport for 25 years. And grant assurance 19 and 34 requires the city to keep the airport open, usable, maintained, and as use changes to meet those standards when it's rebuilt. Now, I forwarded the grant assurances to the city attorney. I like him, depending on how we vote, or if you want to see, or if we do vote, if you want to see his take on what these grant assurances say if we are required to do this. But it's a tangible economic benefit. This is a $2.2 million project. We pay $117,000 for it. It will probably last 30 plus years. And jet traffic, I mean, if we're going to compete with the cities our size or bigger to attract better businesses, more businesses, or keep these stainless steel companies and our healthcare system going well, these are really good paying jobs. Some of these stainless steel companies are flying out 1 or 2 times a week. One has a turboprop, uses it extensively, bids contracts through the entire country, has teams, have expanded, has a huge tax base. I think it's well worth considering this. And I would ask that we reinstate this into the CIP, starting with the engineering fees for next year and the reconstruction following year.
We have a motion by Alderman Varsho. And Alderman Varsho, would you please state your motion?
Make a motion to add project 415-3825 runway 1634 extension and partial parallel taxiway back onto the staff's proposed 2026-2030 capital improvement plan.
And Alderman Giles as a second?
Yes.
And we have comments from Alderman Spiros first, Alderman Werman second, Dellis third, and Tompkins fourth. Alderman Spiros?
Yes, I would just ask if Scott could clarify, you said something about raising the hangar fees and something else. Can you elaborate on that? What kind of revenue that would generate?
We have a land lease that's going to be increasing. It expires this year. That will increase by a floor of $5,000. The lease isn't signed yet, but that's the floor of the amount. And the hangar leases going forward, we're allowed to increase them. The actual hangar revenue right now is considerably small, but we're trying to get more competitive with Wisconsin Rapids, some of the neighboring airports. So it's a 10% increase we can max out at. So we're going to do that this year to bring in revenue. I can't tell you what the hangar revenue is going to be, but the land lease will be $5,000.
Alderman Werman?
Thank you. I believe that I missed this CIP meeting where we ended up having to take this out. I know I was at a couple and that was a very busy time, so apologies. I would have voted to keep this in. I would like us to take advantage of every opportunity that we get for major support in funding. And if anybody has looked at this project, I know Scott did a good job summarizing it here, but we're talking about $2.2 million and an additional $100,000 in design, with the city sharing the cost of about 5%, which this is $117,500. I know we're in a tight spot. It's really hard. It's no different to me than Public Works. It's really hard to pass up funding that benefits the city in the long run. So I would definitely highly recommend that we put this back in. So I'm in agreement with the motion, and plus it may be an excellent spot to store snow down the line.
Alderman Tompkins?
Hey, sorry, I have to get my composure after that. Okay, so I absolutely agree that the airport's important, and I absolutely agree that we need to resurface and maintain every runway that we have. So this is an extension, so this is a new extending our runway. And from talking to Jeff, the main reason that we are extending it is because of the jets. It's not because of the turboprops. And so for the last 6 years, on average, and this comes from the airport report of July, we have like 1,400 single, we have over 3,000 other airplanes, and we have less than 150 jets. Our jets are coming in June. It was 16 departures and arrivals. So I just wanted it to come back to the council to say, when we have very tight funds and we are deciding what our priorities for the funds are, it's not that the jets can't come to our airport. They do. It's just that when it rains and when it snows, they have to fly into Wausau, and a driver has to come and get them. And I love the fact that you guys have looked for other revenue, because that was one of my requests, is let's look for other ways to raise money for this. We do have to remember that it's not just $117,000. When we borrow at 3% over 20 years, that's $155,000. So increasing the land rent would be about $100,000 over 20 years. That's the loan, but then you have to look for 55 more thousand. So as a representative of the people, I just want us to really be careful that when we are looking at debt that they have to pay off, have we looked at all of our revenue? And I did ask, were any of these companies approached to say, would you like to do a tax deductible donation to help with this project? And they were not asked. And I think they should be asked, because if they say, no, the ROI isn't good for our business, we would, it's cheaper for us to drive up and get our people. Well, that's our answer. But if they say, yeah, we would love to contribute to this airport, we love the city and we want to see this airport prosper, that's a great partnership. So, thank you.
Alderman Curran.
I might need Jeff to speak on this, but there's also a safety concern on the turboprops. The turboprop traffic using the 6-year comparison was up 50% in 2024 and is up probably 30%, 40% this year. It's my understanding, Jeff, per your report, that turboprops have to carry less people, watch fuel loads in order to use our current facility. Can you? I'm asking if that's accurate or not. No, it's not accurate at all. It's not accurate.
Nope, we need you up. Nope. Thank you, Dan. Jeff is up there. Yep. You guys can go ahead and do this together. That'd be great.
Let me explain why we have to have the extension. The extension is needed when it rains, okay? What happens is we have an accelerated stop distance. It counts for turboprops. It counts for jets, okay? What it means is we're going to get up to like 110 miles an hour, okay? We have to abort the takeoff because we lose an engine. At that point, I pull the throttle back, boom, I can get on the binders or the brakes, put it in reverse, and I can get it stopped. If we had a donor flight coming in right now, we could not have them come in. Okay, there's rain in the forecast. So what that means, okay, the way the donor flights work, it's very important. I want to let you know how it is. Okay, we got somebody up at the hospital, and okay, it's a donor. Okay, they let it go out, and within an hour, we'll have 3 airplanes sitting out here on the ramp. If there's rain on the forecast, we'll have 2, because the jet's not coming in. Okay? Because we have rain in the forecast. We should have had this extension 5 years ago to take care of our donor flights. Okay? That's the way they accelerated stop distance. When we get water on a runway, we take a penalty. They call it contaminated runway. That's a fancy word for water. Anyway, so we have to take the penalty of usually 10 to 15%. And so that means is we don't get donor flights in here. And they say, well, they can go to another airport. No, they can't. It's so time sensitive. Even, I asked one time, why don't we have our doctors do it? It's so specialized that the doctors and there'll be 3 people on this airplane, out of each airplane, they'll get their donation and they'll leave and they're gone. And the reason is that we can't keep track of the one that doesn't come in, because I call dispatch or I check the weather and they said, well, we're going to we just got a call, we're going. I look at the weather and I said, no, we're not, it's canceled. Okay, that's one heart or lung that's not going. So how many do you put on that? What number do you put on it? Is 5 okay a year? 6 okay a year? Okay, after 10 years, that's 60 hearts that haven't been delivered because the city of Marshfield doesn't have a 500-foot extension? Really? That's why we need the runway. We needed it 4 years ago, because the world is changing out there where whether or not people are flying jets, organ donor flights, and what we're seeing is they're getting Learjets. Their older Learjets require more runways than a brand new big jet because they just require more runway. That's just the nature of the beast, and that's what they're using for donor flights. Okay? Any more questions?
I wanted to add, I didn't read grant insurance 34. I don't have any questions for you, Dan.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say turboprops are affected with the accelerated stop distance the same as a jet.
So the one thing I didn't read when I was discussing with Carl Kemper, grant insurance 34, the runway needs to be rebuilt, and when it is rebuilt, which it's going to be, it needs to be done up to this current standards, which would be 5,500 square feet or 5,500 feet.
Alderman Curran? Okay, you're done. Alderman Dellis?
Scott, do you foresee any time in the near future that not doing this runway extension would hinder a new business, say, coming to Marshfield and expanding?
Yes.
Alderman Tompkins, then Alderman Weigel.
First of all, thank you for the information about the turboprop. I didn't get that information from Jeff when I asked him. He just said that it was only jets that required the extension. So thank you for that extra detail. That changes a lot. So I appreciate that. Mr. Wolfgram, I'm just wondering your interpretation of the guidelines. Were they that we have to build it?
I haven't had an opportunity to review that enough to know for sure if that's what, from a legal point of view, but at least preliminarily, Scott did send me some information in regard to that. And I mean, without absolutely committing to it, it did appear that there was probably an obligation for that. But I can't render that as an official opinion at this point.
Alderman Weigel?
Do we need to make a corresponding move and decrease or remove something from the CIP to fund this one?
It sort of depends on what you do. I mean, the staff's initial proposal was that the city, through long-term debt, fund the remaining portion that wasn't being covered by other revenues. The suggestion that's been made by Councilmember Tompkins back on July 31st that kind of started this process was to look at fees and lease payments, other revenues that might come from the benefiting companies who are using that runway. And I think we've heard the response tonight from airport representatives, and we have Councilmember Curran suggesting that they found some other revenues that might be helpful.
Let me rephrase the question then, Steve. Can we just do what's been proposed right now and just increase the CIP spending with nothing further?
As originally proposed?
As the motion stands right now.
Yeah, I'm forgetting exactly. Did that include the comments made by Mr. Curran?
Current motion is just to add that project back to the CIP.
Okay. Which doesn't directly, I guess it doesn't suggest any change from the current funding source for the balance being long-term debt. However, I think what Mr. Curran is saying is that there will be some other revenues coming in that will be helpful to the project. I'm not sure if we equated that in terms of being a funding source at this point, but that they're, go ahead.
That revenue will go directly to the city, the revenue from the land lease. But the CIP did show a positive balance. We had money left over. When that was pulled out, I'm nearly certain. I can't say that for 2027, but for 2026, it should be as simple as putting it back in because we didn't add spending once we pulled that out.
Okay, I'm gonna look at our finance director as I say this. Don't get panicked and don't move, okay? But I'm just for you, look, I mean, my understanding of what we're talking about right now, Jennifer, is that the CIP as presented would stand with the balance that's not being covered by the grants being covered by long-term debt by the city. However, the additional revenue that Councilmember Cran is talking about would come in to the city in some way, shape, or form as offsetting revenue for airport operations or something, yet to be determined. And again, I apologize for saying this to you in this manner, but as opposed to modifying the revenue sources shown for that CIP project directly, would that seem reasonable?
So typically that land, the leases for whether they're hangars or the land goes to the operating. When we do a project like the runway extension, that's accounted for separately in a capital project fund. And within that fund, there is some fund balance, but it is not nearly enough to cover for this project. So when we made the CIP initially, that $117,000 was to be funded by debt. That's two separate pots of money. So when you took that out, my assumption is that you would want to put that back into CIP being funded by debt, unless you make another motion to fund it either by making a transfer from the general fund in anticipation of these increased leases or some other funding source. I think Councilwoman Tompkins had suggested a transfer from the Economic Development Fund. So that part is yet to be sorted out.
And the reason I didn't suggest that is because I don't think the dollar amount's defined quite yet. But if that's, a good way to do it, so be it.
You will see the CIP come back to you. We're working through what that looks like in terms of how we can accommodate all the debt requests. So at that time, we can put it back into CIP as debt. You'll get another chance to look at it and see if you feel that the proposed plan at that time would be adequate or if we need to make adjustments. Does that sound fair?
Representing the amount, and I'm very thankful for the revenue you're talking about, representing that at that time into the mix.
Alderman Dellis?
When would we see the CIP coming back? I still have the floor. When is the CIP coming back?
Possibly in the second meeting of this month or otherwise October. And it's a good time for me to explain real briefly at a high level what we've been dealing with. The finance director and I have been talking with our financial advisor Ellers about some of the later years. I think what we presented to you back in July, you saw that the back end of that 5-year plan did not balance. And so looking at some options as to how to try and mitigate that, and actually looking at, I think there was a comment made by somebody on this body to look at even going beyond 2030 as to what the debt might look like, and taking that into account in terms of spreading it out further. We've got the police station project and so forth. So as much as we really want to get that back in front of you, we want to get it right and make sure that it all makes sense and is something you can look at potentially approving.
So realistically, we're talking 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if early October would be a good guess. Not ideal, and I apologize for that, but again, the fact that we could not bring you what we wanted to bring you in July, based upon the high level of need and the fact that many of them are state projects that basically we have to do them or lose the funding to get them done. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Is that all, Andrew?
Yes.
Thank you. Alderman Dellis?
I want to apologize. We all know I'm newer on this, so I just have a really quick question that you may be able to answer. If we go ahead and pass this and do this, we can still go out and try to raise funds and do the donation type thing, as Natasha explained earlier, correct?
I think what you're saying, if you approve the motion, is that you want this project put back into the plan. It was pulled out after the last meeting, pending ideas on how to cover the city's portion of the funding. by approving this motion tonight, you'd be saying, I want this project back in the CIP. It would still leave up for grabs how much funding could be extracted from other sources other than long-term borrowing. So in other words, I'm just going to make this up, but would you say 117,000 is the current amount that the city would be looking at? Maybe ultimately there's enough funding from what Councilmember Coran is talking about and some other funds to reduce that to 90,000 or some other number, I don't know. And then the final CIP would show that difference as being a funding source coming from outside of long-term debt, coming from revenue raised from other sources related to the airport. Yep.
Alderman Coran?
And I just want to add, adding it back into the CIP is always a fluid document, but it keeps it in there for planning purposes for city staff and allows us to revisit it again 2 to 4 weeks, whenever down the line.
Alderman Tompkins?
Is there a way either the airport commission or the finance team could sort of give us a package? I mean, the more we don't pay for this with debt, the better it is. I mean, if we don't pay for this with debt, we save $38,000. And if this goes over budget, we save even more just from interest. So is there a way to get a package? Either, I don't know how that would, to say like, hey, your land leases every single year, X amount of land lease is going to go into this fund. I don't know, I'm not an accountant, but it would be great if we could lower the debt. That would be fantastic.
I imagine we could try and calculate the longer-term impact of what you're suggesting is possible, in terms of annual lease payments and that type of thing, and figure out what that might look like. I'm doing nothing but thinking out loud, and that's always dangerous. But I respect that thought of yours.
Any other comments, questions? So we have a motion on the floor, and Jess, would you please read that motion?
To add project number 4153825, runway 1634 extension and partial parallel taxiway back into the staff's proposed 2026 to 2030 capital improvement plan.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, comments, please vote.
Mr. Horman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. Item Q, request to track hours worked by exempt employees referred to council by Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee, presented by Mike O'Reilly, Council Member District 6.
District 9.
9. Oh, okay, but mine says 6, so there we go.
That is my fault. I apologize. Kind of a little bit of dyslexia or something.
All right. All right, thank you. Yeah, this thought process I came up with, first thing I think I'd have to say is, everyone I bring it up to is thinking it's a gotcha moment for staff, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I'll just run through a few of the ideas I had, not get as involved, and hopefully everybody saw the video from the finance meeting. I believe there's a lot of pros to doing this. One is, obviously, it would track whoever wouldn't be working enough hours, which is good to know if it does happen. But it also tracks people that we feel are working too many hours and will burn themselves out. We've had retainage issues in the past, and it would be a good way to monitor that. It would also help track labor needs by department. We do have peaks and valleys that happen in different seasons in different departments. And it would offer a tool to staff to be able to look back historically, in August, we get busy in this department. Is there a way we could rewrite job descriptions? Can we get some crosswork between departments to never eliminate the peaks and valleys, but you can definitely soften them by going that route with doing some of that. It would increase transparency and accountability to the stakeholders in the community. And to me, that's extremely important. I don't like the potential for one of my constituents to say, how many hours did this person work last year? I don't know. I call City Hall. They don't know. There's no way anybody can tell me. And I think in the political climate we have, it's transparency and accountability are of the utmost importance. it also comes in handy with staff who is, staff and council really, who are tasked with creating positions or moving hourly employees to salaried positions that we really don't have any data-driven information. It's more subjective feelings by staff that they bring forward. It was interesting, one of the municipalities in one of the emails I saw that Sarah had sent said, it also is a safeguard against insurance fraud with workers' compensation. If someone leaves, it's hard to claim that you hurt yourself at work, and if you were, so I did go through the cons that I have heard. Micromanaging, I don't know how you can consider documenting hours worked as micromanagement. If anything, it would be macromanaging. Morale, I can understand a concern on the staff's part, but ultimately, just documenting, this isn't anything drastic or crazy. You're just documenting hours being worked. So I don't see that as crazy. And trust, I think it actually adds to the trust, because if you are working those hours and it shows, that should be tracked as well, and it should gain the public's trust. So everything I've looked at, roughly 40% of salaried employees currently track their hours. I just think it's a responsible way to go about this. I know I've talked to some people in the community that are salaried personnel, and all but one of them do have their hours tracked in one way, shape, or form. This isn't something crazy or chaotic that we're requesting. It's a pretty much a norm. And even in the numbers we got from Sarah, you were looking at, out of, I may be off on the numbers a little bit, but there was like 103 people she sent it out to. 25 of them, there was only like 33 respondents. 25 of them did track their hours in one way, shape, or form, and the 8 of them did not. So, I mean, I have a hard time believing, if you're looking at that kind of a breakdown, that out of the other 70, roughly 70, that you're not gonna have 15, 20 of those that would track it. So I'm not doing it to cause chaos, but I think it's a great tool. I think it's good transparency for the stakeholders, and I just don't see any major downfalls for it. So I guess I'd be interested in hearing any input, and I have an open mind to it, but I think it would be beneficial to the city and staff.
Alderman Werman?
Thank you. I was looking at this and I went back and rewatched the presentation and the video from the meeting. I have been a salaried employee at different companies, mind you. I'm not in the public sector, right? I'm private. But for, 15-ish years, and I've never tracked time. When you get hired into an exempt position, I think the expectation is that you are trusted to do your job. However, given that these are public sector, this is a municipality, I can totally understand the idea behind that transparency. I would think that instead of this being something where you would track all of your time, doing like a punch in, punch out, I think this needs to be more project related. I believe that was brought up during the meeting, more of like a project management approach, and I can absolutely agree to that. If we have somebody who's working on a project, I think to go to somebody like Steve or anybody like that and say, I want to know what you do all day. So if you're working on emails for 25 minutes, I want you to track that. And then if you take a bathroom break for the next 10 minutes, I want you to mark that down too. And I may be overthinking it if that's what we're looking at versus like, oh, I punched in at 8:32 and I worked until 6:45 today. That's a totally different thing. If we're looking at, I want to know what this person is doing during the day, I think we are overextending. I think that it would be a better approach to come at it from a project perspective to say, hey, we know that you are playing a part in the budget, and I want to know how much time of your day you're spending on the budget. Because I think, especially given that Mr. Rigel and myself have been asking for budget meetings since January, it would be really good to know if all of a sudden in September, every department is strapping every employee 8 hours a day, 5 days a week to come up with budget numbers versus spreading it out throughout the year and slowly working on it. Things like that, I think, could be hugely beneficial. And so I think there's a way to do it without, I don't want to say doing it the wrong way, but doing it in a way that I think would hurt the relationship. I think we have a retention problem, to Mike's point. I also think we have a hiring problem. And I personally, like, I would not want to work for a company where I know that I'm going to have to document every single minute of my day. Punching in and out probably wouldn't bother me as much because, again, to your point, some weeks I'm going to work 35 hours, some weeks I'm going to work 65 hours. It's just the nature of being a salaried employee. You don't always get that break. But there's trade-offs. But I do think that my concern would be there's going to be a trust barrier regardless because the expectation has already been set that that's not something that people do. And I do know that other places do that, but I just think when you've already worked at a job, and I went through this when I worked for the clinic, they did something very similar. Every project had to be tracked and it was difficult to adjust, but it was project-based. But that's where it gets real tricky is if you're working on this for 30 minutes, you have to justify, well, why did you spend 30 minutes working on emails? Like, how many emails do you get a day? It starts to get very granular. And I think that's where we're going to have a hard time maintaining retention, but also bringing new people in. So I think there's a good way to go about it. And I think we could definitely pursue that where we could start looking at things that are a concern. I think the budget is a big one. We know that we're getting under the wire every time. And I think people are putting in way too much time and we're probably cramming stuff in very last minute. And I don't think it's good for anybody, the council or the employees. And so stuff like that, I think would be really good to review. And I could say the same for projects. If we're saying, hey, go back and, communications is a great one, right? That's something that I'm going to eventually put on the future agenda items tonight. But they came tonight with a presentation to say, hey, we're short on money. So going back to them and saying, hey, we want to know how much time you put into having to come up with new options. Like, did you spend 40 hours this week having to develop ideas just to come back and say we're strapped and we need more help? Those types of things I think would be great. So I do think there's a right way to go about it. I think it's definitely something we could pursue without hurting any relationship with anyone.
Alderman Dulles?
Well, every salaried position I've ever worked for, and it's probably a few more years than what Derek has, I've always had to clock in and out just to keep track of what store I was working at, where I was in location, projects. I don't think it's that big of a deal to have them track it to a point, but like Derek said, there's got to be a way that we can do it that doesn't hurt relationship. You know what, I understand that there's certain people in this room right now that do stuff outside of their normal work hours. So I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but let's just say somebody has to go to do a court appearance in the morning and it's that person's day off and he takes his personal vehicle to go to court and then comes back. There's got to be a way to track on an app, on his phone, whatever there is, so that he is free to go do what he's got to do, but then leave and not have to come back anywhere to punch out or, there's got to be a way to work it out so that they can take care of it.
Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. Yeah, much to what Derek said, what I was looking for is just a simple punch in, punch out at this point. I think it may come in handy, and I think that could be left to staff if they wanted to utilize that to a further level. I know you start working on these state projects and you have to account for the time that was spent and everything. I don't want to get into the micromanagement portion of it like that, unless, ultimately, if this would pass, there's going to have to be a policy in place that would kind of work through the details on it. I think it makes sense to do it, but I definitely wouldn't want to get into the email monitoring and the whole process because that would just be terrible to try to administer, so.
Alderman Fire?
My question is, you got staff that's salaried. They're not a 40-hour staff. What if you find out that they work a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and they got 50 hours a week? What are you going to do? You're going to increase their pay? No. All you're going to know is they worked the extra 50 hours. If you can't trust your staff then you've got a problem with your system. You don't hire a person to run a department and pay him what you're paying him if you don't trust him. So I think this is, and I brought it up, my son works for the VA and he's the federal government, and they've been forcing them to track. Well, they tried to track for a while. They finally gave that up because it didn't work out. If you're a staff person and you're getting paid salary, you should be trusted to do what you do, and we shouldn't have to worry. And just tell your constituents, I think you're getting your money's worth from the staff we've got.
Alderman Spiros?
Yeah, so I put a lot of thought behind this and tried to go through what I thought were, the cons and the pros and this kind of thing. And what I consistently keep hearing is, people are working 55 hours a week. They're working 52 hours a week. They're working 54 hours a week. Why do you want to track that? And I'm not sure I do want to track it, but what I could see coming out of that is if somebody is consistently working 55 hours a week, we as a council should be sitting back saying, do they need another person in their department? I mean, this person is constantly at 55 or 60 hours a week. I just don't think I understand what salaried people do. I've been salaried before and I've been hourly before. I'll tell you, I always wish to be hourly. The reason I wish to be hourly is when I work 55 hours a week, 15 of that is coming to me at double pay. So, that's the one thing that I consistently kept hearing. Well, what is this? Are you trying to think that people are only working 30 hours a week? I didn't consistently hear that. I consistently heard, or I'm already doing 55 hours a week. I'm already putting in 60 hours a week. So I would look at it as a tool in that respect, that somewhere down the line, perhaps that department just needs more help. Maybe that's what's happened to some of our salaried employees. Maybe they left because they were working 60 hours a week. We don't know. We don't know why they left. We can't say that for sure because we didn't track their time. So did we lose important people because of that? We don't know unless they were willing to tell us. The other thing that I was thinking about was I think that we could make, I believe we use Kronos. Yes, I believe we use Kronos, which does have an app that's available for people to install on their work phones. And so they would be able to punch in and punch out if they were, say, going to a court hearing and that's the only place they had to go that day. Additionally, I think for these employees who are putting in so many hours, it's a good thing for them to know that, because then if they do want comp time and there's a big issue with a particular person not being able to get their comp time, they can certainly say, look, the last 3 weeks in a row, I worked 60 hours. I'd like a day off. And I think it's much easier to say, yeah, you deserve that. You deserve two at that point. So, I understand it could be a culture kind of thing that's going on here, that people just don't want to do it. I remember the first time that I was salaried at the clinic, when I first became salaried, we did not punch in, and then they made it a department rule, a few months later, that we had to punch in, and we were very offended by that. For I don't know what reason. Because at the clinic, you all arrive at 8 a.m. and you leave at 5:30. Everybody does. So I don't know why we took such offense, but I will say that we did feel sort of offended by it. It didn't do any good, because there you really don't have a say. You just do what you're told, period, end of story. So I just have mixed emotions, but I think if what I'm hearing is true, which is that our employees are putting in tremendous amounts of hours, I think it would be very beneficial to know that.
Alderman Werman?
Thank you. I think we are walking a very fine line of, I think we're trying to do the right thing, which, we're at least framing it that way, right? Like, we want to monitor people's hours, essentially, because if we do think that they're overworked, we want to help. The problem that I see is that we are not in a position to help. We don't have the budget. We can't hire people. We have a hard time retaining people. I don't understand what the outcome is if we are at that point. If they are working 55-hour weeks and we are like, hey, that's concerning, what changes? Because we can't afford to hire anybody new. So all we could do is say, yeah, you guys definitely need another person, but we can't give that to them. And that's part of my concern is now we're just in a spot where we're saying, yeah, you work too much, but somebody's got to do it. Especially because these deliverables don't change. If a budget is due, they're going to have to bring it. Somebody has to do the budget. And I think we're going to wind up in one of two spots. I think one, we're going to have pushback and we're going to have people who just will refuse to work more than they absolutely have to because we're saying, hey, we don't want you overworking yourself. If this is a problem, we need to help fix it. Or two, you're going to have people who lie. I think there will be people who just will not track their time and they will do the extra work anyways because they know, hey, my job is potentially at risk if I can't deliver this. It doesn't matter how many hours I'm working. And these are not facts, right? This is just strictly opinion based on what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. I have concerns over that. I still think there's a right way to potentially go about this. I just think if that's what our argument is going to be, I think most employees are going to laugh at us and think that we're full of it.
Alderman Giles, Alderman Spiros, then Alderman Weigel.
Yes, thank you. In response to Alderperson Spiros, I have actually sought out former employees and asked them why they've left. They may not have, originally said, but far and away it's been, they said they were micromanaged. And I kind of feel like this is, whether it's intended or not, is micromanaging. So I won't support it for that reason. Department heads know how much their employees are working, whether it's tracked or not. I guarantee you can ask any department head and they'll have a pretty good idea of what everyone works. So I understand the thought behind it, but I think it's more trouble than it's worth.
Alderman Spiros?
I just want to follow up on something Derek said. I agree. We have a very tight budget. Everyone knows that. We've broadcast that, as loud as we can. But our employees are our number one most valuable asset. And it is the job of this council to provide them a good working environment. And if they are working 55 or 60 hours consistently, and we still are not getting the production we need, then they need another person. And it is up to this council to find where we make the cuts to give the employees what they need. Whether that comes in things like, that are parks and recs and things that are extras, that's our job. We have a tight budget, but our job is to take care of these employees and to take care of the citizens that we represent. And sometimes just tough decisions have to be made. It's this council's job. I think that the employees are our number one asset, and we should never, ever forget that. If we are overworking them, they deserve not to be overworked.
Alderman Weigel?
Thank you. Couple of things. First, I've been salaried, I've been hourly. I think a lot of us have been. As dumb as this may be, but in virtually all of my salaried positions, the expectation was I get paid 40 hours, but I work more than 40. It was for my other coworkers too. That's kind of the name of the game with salaried employees. You get paid 40, but you work more. Some weeks you may be working under 40, but you have the luxury of knowing that you're still going to pay for 40 when that 1 week might have been low, despite the fact that most others are going over 40. Secondly, I think we need to trust our employees. I trust them. If they're overworked, they'll tell us. If they're going to work 50 hours a week because they get a project done, great. If they get the project done in 30, wonderful. And that kind of relays into the next one too of we're paying for project. We're not paying for hours. If you get all your work done in 2 hours a week, as long as you're getting the job done, I'm happy with it. I'm not going to make you come in for another 38 just because you need to punch the clock and hit 40. And I think having them punch the clock is really going to tell them that I don't trust them to do the work. And thirdly, this is to some degree bureaucratic red tape. I don't think we're going to get anything out of it. I think we're going to have them punching in, punching out, forgetting to, and just creating more work than's necessary. And if we truly do trust our employees and if they're truly our number one asset, let them do it. And, to that point, once again, they'll tell us if they're overworked. And if we're going to trust them, let them keep track of their own time if they want to, not make it mandatory. If they want to track their time, wonderful, great, you're tracking it. If not, so be it. But I don't think this is a wise idea. I think it's going to create more friction than is necessary. And like I said, the salaried employees, I trust them. They're doing a good job. They're working hard, and they can keep doing it.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, this discretion of the council. So we will go on to item R. Debrief in finding and recommendations made in the organizational structure report for economic development presented at the August 26th council meeting, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we had a good presentation 2 weeks ago by Kristen Fish-Peterson of Redevelopment Resources. It was a follow-up to our contacting with her back in March to take a look at how we do organizational structure for economic development. In other words, not what are we doing with our TIF districts, not what are we doing with the business park or whatever, but broadly speaking, how are we set up to try and effectively, bring employers here, grow them, do the kind of things that are responsive to having economic activity in our community. So I'm not going to read the whole report. You've had a chance to do that, I'm sure. And also, you saw her presentation. I think you probably still have a copy of the PowerPoint. If you don't, I can send it to you. But really, I want to hit on the main themes that she talked about, and let you guys debrief a little bit and decide what you want to do with that report before it gets too far afield, before it gets longer than 2 weeks out. So one of the main things we wanted her to do was to meet with all the representatives from the various partners, as we call them, Mackey, Main Street, Visit Marshfield, those folks, and get a sense of what they're doing. Utilities in that mix as well. And CDA, I think they may have met with them as well. And then kind of look at, are people cooperating well? Are they not cooperating well? Are there overlaps? Are there gaps? Are people doing what they're best suited to do? Or is there an opportunity for improvement? And she made some notes about that in her report and also verbally in front of you 2 weeks ago. But when it came right down to it, I think the really heart and soul of what she wanted to bring to us are captured in a couple of recommendations. And I'm going to focus on those particularly, although we can talk about everything that she commented on in her overall report, of course. But at the end, she really came up with a couple of themes, one of which is that she believes that we should increase our staffing here at the city, not rocket science. I don't think that's the case at all. 2 positions that she definitely wants to see filled. One are the top position in the Development Services Department. We've sometimes referred to it as looking for a community development director. In recent years, she's calling it specifically an economic development director that we ought to have, the top position in that department. And then the second position she's looking for is she's calling economic development and planning coordinator. I walked us into a weird place that night, if you remember, because the progress of her project went on for quite a while through the late spring and summer. During that time, we finally hired James, our new planner. So, the idea of a planner fitting into her plan, not exactly, because her vision was for an economic development and planning coordinator. And I guess we have to decide how we want to take that. But she definitely wanted to see 2 bodies doing economic development and planning here in the city. And of course, we've been without those positions until recently with James for a long time. The other big one is the idea of making the CDA a housing authority as opposed to a full-blown statutory powers that they have today to do redevelopment and other things, and creating a new body called the RDA, the Redevelopment Development Authority. She walked through the benefits of that in terms of allowing the CDA to do what they do best, which is really the housing, Parkview, Cedar Rail, and beyond, and they do a great job of that, and creating another body with some, for lack of a better term, business type people, whether it be banker, realtor, whatever, to look at how we can maybe increase development. I think CDA has made it well known in the past that they've been interested in taking a greater role. So that's one of the things that comes up. I know they expressed some concern about being moved back into more of the role of just being purely housing. Admittedly, that's been their general focus over the time that I've been here for 15 years, but they've shown interest in going beyond that. So that's one thing you may want to talk about. The other is, if in fact you buy into the idea that they have the CDA be a housing authority and the RDA be created, how would the new RDA interact with the rest of city government? What would their role be along with the council, along with the staff, along with the other economic development partners? And she kind of highlights that a little bit on I think it's pages maybe 7 and 8, where she talks about roles and responsibilities of the organizations like the ones I mentioned, the 501c3, C6 type agencies, and how they would play specifically into working with an RDA if in fact that body was created and put into place. She also went through some timelines of implementation. She did that for illustrative purposes in case we buy in, how long would it take to do different pieces of the puzzle. But what I really want to do tonight is get your feeling 2 weeks out of her presentation and her report. What do you think about what Kristen came up with? Do you like it? Do you have concerns or questions about it? And then ultimately, what do you think about the recommendations that she put forth? And I think that a little bit of debriefing here would be maybe a good start to that process.
Alderman Coran?
I think the absolute first step is hiring that economic development person. And I think we should discuss it at finance and personnel and do the same process that allowed us to find a city planner and fill that position and then work from there. I think otherwise, without that position, it seems like everything falls apart anyway. So that's my thought.
Alderman Werman?
Thank you. I think I don't know if the intent was to kind of discuss this after strategic planning as well, because I think that was kind of a comment that we had made last time, is that we should revisit this again afterwards. And obviously strategic planning meeting number 1 got pushed. So I think that kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in the plan, but overall, I agree. I think in an ideal world, we absolutely hire those 2 people and we're off to the races. But I think similar to what we've been looking at, we were kind of looking at positions very similar to this already and haven't had a whole lot of luck. I still think this is something that we as a council really need to sit down and maybe this is something where I know we have these strategic planning meetings and we want to try to shoot for like 8 hours on a weekend. We might need to do smaller meetings. I don't know if that means we go with our guy and meet with him more frequently, or if we do our own kind of sections here and there. I know it's budget season, but I just don't know how we can move forward with a lot of this stuff without knowing where we want to go as a council for the city. Just because, again, it's in an ideal state, I think I don't know about all of us. I think a lot of us would agree that we should probably just hire an economic development director, but I just don't think it's as easy as it looks on paper. And I think we need a better idea of what we want to try to do as a group and as a community.
Yeah, can I speak? Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points. First of all, the idea of having shorter meetings. I've had that conversation multiple times with Daniel Foth, our facilitator. He, if we go with him, he's been consistently opposed to that because he's afraid if we do 2.5 hour sessions even, that, we're going to lose momentum. In other words, you come back 2 or 3 weeks later and it's like, oh, what did we cover last week? You don't really build momentum in a couple hours at a time. But I could tell, we've been through it. It's hard to get people for 6 or 7 hours, in a block of time, especially on a weekend. As far as, waiting until we have the strategic plan before we do some of these things, I kind of agree with you. The only problem is that we're going into the budget here. So I guess the question is, recruitment itself is going to be a challenge. Sarah and I work on that in terms of trying to fill positions, and we've had vacant positions for a while that we've been trying to fill. But, the reality is that if we want to talk about something budgetarily that relates to that position, we need to know if that's something we're gunning for in 2026 or not. But I do agree that economic development needs to be a top priority in the strategic planning process. And I'd like to see that going forward sooner rather than later. But I guess it's up to this body if you want to try and find a way to start doing preparatory work in smaller bites before January, because I really think during the budget season and Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's going to be hard to pull off something bigger.
Alderman Spiros?
I think the position of Economic Development Director is a key position. If I could snap my fingers, I'd have somebody in that role tomorrow, yesterday. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities or potential missed opportunities because we don't have anybody specifically designated to run economic development. Now, the other question you had was about her suggestion of the CDA doing their thing, but then having the RDA handle other duties or what have you. We've heard from multiple CDA members that they're capable of doing everything that was suggested by the RDA. They just don't have enough employees, or they need one more person, or what have you. So I don't know what the solution to that is, honestly, and I don't want to pretend I know the solution to that because I've never served on the CDA. I'd be speaking out of turn if I tried to even justify what I think is capable for them. So I think we have to trust their judgment on that, and we have to go by what they thought. But I do think that we need to look for an economic development director. And while it would be nice to wait for strategic planning, like you said, Steve, the budget is coming. It would also, we put a plate, or we've used the money that we would spend on an economic development director's salary. We've used that at least 2 years to plug the budget, maybe more. And I assume we were planning on doing that again. And what happens then if a month later we find the perfect candidate? It's just such a timing issue for me. I don't even know if this could be done before, this is mid-September. It's highly doubtful we would even find anybody before budget starts. So that may be a moot point at this stage in the game. But I do think the earlier in a budget season that you know what you're going to do, the better. So with that said, I would like to start looking seriously for an economic development director. I don't know what path we take. I think that probably our searches have been serious in the past. I don't know how they can get more serious. I'm going to leave that up to Sarah. She'll figure it out. But I do think that we need to look to hire this person, 100%. Now, the economic development and planning coordinator, I know that she proposed that before. We were lucky enough to get James. And I'm just thinking he fills that role. Am I misthinking that that's not what the intention would be, or that would be?
That's not the position that he was offered or accepted, or the one that he sought out. I mean, he has some skills and interest in areas that I think may go in that direction ultimately. But that would require some conversation. I think it's not a position we even have in our job descriptions right now. So.
Got you. So, that would be, I think, worth a conversation with him and to explore that if that's what we need. If that's not what we need, then that's fine. Leave him in the position he's in. But I think it's worth talking about. A city that fails to grow just flounders. And eventually they run into huge budget issues like we're seeing. We need to grow. We need revenue. It's the only way we get revenue.
Alderman Tompkins and Alderman Weigel.
Thank you. I think our number one issue is revenue. And I would propose that we would get this economic development director and take their salary for 3 years out of our 205 fund. And kickstart economic development with that money. And then after we have someone, we have been given a plan. Someone thought through it, talked to everyone, came up with what they thought was a good plan. Then we look at this plan and say, how do we tweak it? Does this person become working with the CDA? Like all of that stuff we can figure out. But I think we need to hire the person, and I think we need to fund them out of that fund.
Alderman Weigel.
Thank you. I think we mentioned this last time, and we're just revisiting this again for the umpteenth time. I don't think there's a single person on council here who disagrees with the fact that we need to hire an economic development person, period. Now, there's different ideas what shapes and take after we hire that person, but the first step is the same regardless of what direction we go. We need that economic development person, period. And we're talking about strategic planning too. It might not be a bad idea to have them involved in that, have them be there. So I don't think we need to stagger that. I think we need to move forward on both of those fronts, both on the strategic planning and on the economic development economic development director. I know we've tried and it's been frustrating, but I've been on council, my third year on council, and we still haven't filled that position. And I'm pretty sure that was vacant for years before I even got on here. So yeah, we are floundering, and it is tough to try to fill that gap, that void that isn't filled with just piecemealing other people trying to do small jobs here and there. But at the end of the day, we need to do that. And like Ms. Tompkins said, if we need to dip into the 205 fund, I don't know what other purpose or what more apt purpose there is for the 205 fund than to hire someone that's going to full-fledged do this. Like I said, I know we all have different ideas about how it's going to go, but the common denominator here is hiring this person. And if we don't hire the economic development director, I don't know what we're doing. We're just wasting time. We need to hire this person, hook or by crook. I mean, we need to do it. So let's get going on it. And this is not a shot at HR or anything like that, far from it. I know it's difficult and it's hard, but I don't think we need to revisit this every 3 or 4 months to see, do we need to hire this person? We do. It's pretty much a consensus at this point. So I think we move forward with that, period.
Alderman Dillis?
I would ask that you, Steve, consider having that conversation with someone in this room to see if it's something that we can do, at least in the meantime. We need to get somebody in to bridge the gap at this point. Whether that person's willing to do both of those jobs or change his role a little bit. I mean, we need somebody. There's just no doubt about it.
Alderman Spiros?
Andrew's right. You know, we've been looking and some, you know, it's never moving. So I had a couple of questions. What was the wages we were proposing to pay to that person?
Go ahead, Sarah, if you think you can find the range. Well, while Sarah's looking for the range and can report on that, I will say that, you know, in the last 3 years, we haven't gotten somebody into the position. It hasn't been called Economic Development Director. It's been called Development Services Director, over planning and economic development altogether. But each of the 3 years, 22, 23, 24, we've had a candidate that got to the point of being offered the job and ultimately didn't accept it. So candidates have been kind of sparse, but it's not that they haven't been out there. And those have been for different reasons. Didn't want to relocate at the end of the discussion or whatever. But so recruitment is part of it and money's part of it. And I'll let Sarah address what a salary range might be.
So for community development director right now, the salary range, it would start approximately $112,590 just for base salary. So we just haven't actively been looking for anybody just because it's not budgeted for this year. So this year we haven't spent any time at all looking for anyone specifically for that role.
So have we looked for people with that salary range, or is that just something new we came up with and we have not looked?
When we looked for the last time we looked for the position that we had previously filled, it was the assistant city administrator / community development director. That one is higher, so that one is at 118,206. So that was the last time that we were actively looking for someone, but we do have that community development director position. That's just one grade lower.
Okay. I mean, I'm just thinking that we're going too low. We haven't had people bite at this. I think money talks. Money talks. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like it's such a specialized position, and you know, we're in the middle of the state and we don't have amenities like water and you know, things like that to draw people in. And so I think you have to pay a premium. And I'm not sure that if we're not getting bites, maybe our premium isn't really premium.
Alderman Curran?
The question I have is, we hired a firm on a contingency basis to find our city planner. We've never done that with an economic development director.
The last time when we were looking for the director level position, we did utilize a firm. For that level of position, since it's more specialized, it would not be on a contingency basis where we would only pay after we find someone to fill it, because of the extensive amount of time and effort that our agency would have to put into it. There would be an upfront cost. We did do that last time that we looked for this position. Where we did fill it, it just didn't remain filled.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just add too, I mean, you know, I really appreciate the desire, the passion for getting this position filled, because it's critical. Everybody in this room agrees it's a critical position. You know, I tend to still think of it as community development director, not just purely economic development director, because the planning function needs somebody over that as well. But the challenge is going to be money, truthfully. You know, you talk about the starting point being 112, and you throw in health insurance, FICA, WRS, and those kind of things, and you're probably getting upwards of 150, 160, whatever it is. So I appreciate the comment by Councilmember Tompkins about using 205 money. There may be some other creative things we can do. We may look at how we're doing economic development right now, and we are paying some others that would probably come to an end. So there may be some ways to mitigate that salary. But again, as we work on the budget, it's that's really a big part of the challenge. As important as it is, and it is, it's also daunting to fit into a budget that we're already, as you're going to hear from Jennifer in a minute, trying to mitigate the shortfall. But I agree that we need it. I agree with everybody who says that we need it. There's no question about that.
Alderman Spiros?
So, what I would do as proposed to this council, to every member on this council, is as the budget is approaching and you're seeing the numbers in front of you, find the money. Come up with a suggestion and find the money. And it's going to come in the way of a cut. There's no other way to find it. So can everybody kind of have that in the back of their minds? We all know we need this position. We all want this position. So it would be really nice when we start the budget talks if people had some ideas on where to get that money from. I think it's really important, and I do think there are things that we can probably do without.
Any other questions, comments? Yes.
Just one more comment, if I can jump in. So regarding the whole thing with the RDA and the CDA, is it your prerogative at this point to maybe just wait until the strategic planning and address that? And I do think it's worthwhile to touch base with the CDA about what their capabilities are. I don't know how to help in terms when they say that they could do more if they had more resources, because I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean the CDA hiring more people or looking for the city to help provide the CDA with additional staffing or funding? I don't know, but we could certainly examine that before we dive into the world of an RDA write-off, quite frankly.
Okay, moving on to item S. Update the 2026 budget development process presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
Okay, I just wanted to give a little bit of an update. As on our budget calendar for this year, we did, the finance department did deliver the budget to the city administrator on August the 22nd, and we have been meeting with department heads to review their budgets. We're going to be wrapping those up this week. What we can say at this early stage in the process that we are, again, experiencing some challenges when it comes to our expenditures. The budget that the department heads have submitted thus far, we're looking at about $1 million in a shortfall. It should also be noted that the state will be releasing revenue numbers in the next month. We've gotten a couple of those, but the majority of those are going to come out into October. So in the meantime, we'll be working as the revenues numbers come, we'll be working with departments to deliver the hopefully balanced budget to you on October 2nd.
Any questions for Jennifer at this point? Alderman Spiros?
When you're doing these talks with department heads and you're figuring out this balanced budget that you're going to deliver on this second, does that include the issue brought up earlier by the communications committee, I think, wanting to add in the salary of the communications director?
I think Steve wants to jump in here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, I've been meeting with Tom. He and I actually met today, and this has been coming for a while. In case some of you didn't recognize it, some of you maybe who've been on the cable TV or the communications committee before, or have heard what they're dealing with, have seen this train coming. As the franchise fees from charter decline and as expenses rise, we've been headed this direction. So what I talked to Tom about today is, and this is would not solve it long term. This would be kind of get us to hopefully through the year and then talk about what's a more sustainable model for this. But it would be inclusive of a few things. One, some budget cuts that Tom's been working on for 2026, and looking at a little bit of fund balance from the 235 fund. That's a fund that still has about $45,000 that have been rolled over in the past from that department. And then some general fund money to supplement that, because I think that day is coming. So kind of a mixed approach, no one size fits all. And, but I think in conversation as we get into the strategic planning meetings in January, we need to decide what we want from the communications department, because they can do a lot of great stuff. They have done a lot of great stuff with Tom and David, and they can do more. But weighing budgetary situations, since we're going to head more to our general fund if we do that, versus what we're doing to communicate with our citizens, how effective are we being, what ways can we do better, is going to be, I think, part of that conversation. I would think in the strategic planning. It's all about, you can only do what you're funding, and what level do we want to hit in terms of what our communications department is doing for our citizens. So definitely for 2026, you're going to see the city administrator's budget come out with a general fund contribution for the first time that's ever happened. But it's because you can't, and I think it was said very well by whoever was here from the communications committee. Yeah, right. I mean, they have $214,000 of revenue between franchise fees and the state offsetting payment, and $206,000 or something like that with the salaries just for Tom and David and their health insurance and those kind of things. That only leaves a few $1,000s for everything else that they do. That can't work. So the model needs to be looked at in terms of something more sustainable.
But not looking at it for this budget.
No, no, not the bigger picture, but I think definitely you'll see something from me suggesting that there has to be, for the first time ever, some general fund money into the budget. It's got to happen, or they're not going to make it for 2026. And then during early 2026, we have to talk about a longer term vision for sustainability for communications. What do you want? What's important for you to accomplish? How far do you want to go with it? And then how do we fund it?
Item T, suggested items for future agendas. Alderman Werman.
Thank you. I did mention earlier I was going to go and put this on a future agenda. After the presentation from the communications committee tonight, I would hope that in 2 weeks, on the September 23rd meeting, Tom and or David could maybe come and give a presentation to council about the numbers that everybody saw tonight, to give a little bit of background, what they think their proposed options are. I would like to see a couple. I know Steve just mentioned the general fund. I know during our communications committee meeting, they had mentioned their contingency fund. So I would like to see those options laid out. And I would also like to see all the things that communications does for the city and the various departments in a detailed list, because I think there's probably a few things we don't know that they really do, or we don't realize how much they touch. So I would like to get a full comprehensive presentation of that. I know it's a short ask, but I did kind of bring it up in the committee. So I'm hoping we could add that to the agenda in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Anything else? Seeing none, item U, adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Request for additional payment by contractor. Request to purchase land in Daniel's Addition. We have a motion by Alderman Dellis, second by Alderman Curran. Please vote to go into closed session.
Mr. Werman? Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
We are in closed session.